Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from BoardGameCo, and this video is about Asmodee acquiring Miniature Market, which should be obvious from the title. Now, normally this is something I'd cover in my week in review, but this seems to have a lot of small communities from BoardGameGeek, from Facebook groups, from wherever. A lot of people are really upset about this one. Now, ideally, I'd have a copy of Monopoly or maybe Acquire on my table just to have a game on the table, and those would be cute little names. But I don't have either of those games anymore, so it's just me today. And this is going to be very freeform, more so than usual. I don't really have my usual sheet full of bullet points or things I want to cover. There's a few key points I want to hit, but there's a lot of curiosity from my end around why people approach things the way they do, the stances people have, yourself potentially watching this, depending on your reaction. Maybe you're upset, maybe you're not, maybe you couldn't care less, maybe this is the first time you've heard of it. And full disclosure, I don't know if a disclosure is necessary, but just in case, this channel, BoardGameCo, me, Alex Radcliffe, BoardGameCo is also a retail operation. I don't talk about it that much on the channel. I bring it up when it's relevant, like right now. I don't really do this whole, hey, BoardGameCo, buy, sell, trade games. I don't do that. It's not longer conversation as to why I don't. We'll cover that another time. I plan on talking about BoardGameCo more in the future, and my future plans with it. Short version is I'm eventually looking to get out of the retail game, so we're looking to potentially sell it off, not to Asmodee. I mean, Asmodee, if you're watching this, you want to give us a call, we can have a conversation, but as of right now, not to Asmodee. So just a disclaimer that I am coming at this from the stance of somebody who does understand what it's like to work in retail, in board game retail specifically. So take that for whatever grain of salt. Maybe I'm now the evil corporate overlord in terms of this conversation. Again, it's all relative. But basically, the general reaction to Miniature Market being purchased by Asmodee is some people not caring, and then a whole lot of people seeming to be really, really upset at it, and threatening to take their orders elsewhere. By the way, Game Nerds is a name of a store that keeps coming up as far as people who want to shift their purchases over to Game Nerds. I can tell you that the two stores I order from, when BoardGameCo doesn't have it in stock, the two places I order from are Miniature Market and Game Nerds, and I've had great experiences with both of those stores. So if you want to move from Miniature Market to Game Nerds, I love Game Nerds. And if you want to stick with Miniature Market, I've had a great time with Miniature Market. I can easily recommend both those locations. I used to order a lot from Cool Stuff Inc. I eventually moved away from them because price-wise, I just found that they were always like $1 or $2 higher. I haven't checked them in a long time though, so they might actually be more competitive. This is a complete random side point to all of this. But really the conversation, the thing that I find interesting is why the hate so much and so quickly? Because here's what I don't get. Why do you order from where you order? Like, what is it that drives your purchasing decisions as far as where you purchase that game you're currently looking for? And then what is it that drives the decision to stop ordering? Okay, these are all conversations that I'm very interested in how they play out today, because I don't know your answer. But the main thing I'm curious about is, especially in terms of stopping ordering, for those that are not ordering from Miniature Market any longer, now that it's owned by Asmodee, big evil corporate overlord, I am very curious whether you are also ensuring that you will not buy any game under any of the umbrellas that Asmodee owns. You follow me? Meaning, in other words, if you're not going to buy from Miniature Market because you don't want to support anything that's owned by Asmodee, then I assume you're not going to buy any Fantasy Flight game, any Days of Wonder game, any Z-Man game, and like 50 million other companies. There's a whole bunch of companies under the umbrella. Because if your goal is not to support Asmodee, then your goal should be to not support Asmodee, right? Or am I missing something? Because if you're just going to take your purchases away from Miniature Market, but you're going to buy 7 Wonders from Game Nerds, what is your priority system? That's what I don't get, because I understand the instinctive nature of wanting to, deprive the corporate overlord. But I think it's instinctive and so short-sighted in the way it's done, the way it's approached. Meaning, if you want to point to the things Asmodee has done that are actually evil, that are actually bad, that are actually problematic, and you want to say, hey, I'm not going to support corporate overlord because of that, sure, I get it. If you want to say, hey, I'm not going to order from Amazon because of all the stories of truck drivers and peeing in bottles, and I don't want to support that kind of company, that makes sense to me. What is it that Asmodee has done to make them so worthy of hate? Past the fear, The general fear that everyone has, oh no, they're going to destroy the world, they're going to bring around the end to board game civilization as we know it. And we've talked about this in many other small little news clips when Asmodee buys this or Asmodee buys that. And every time I mention the fear and how it's not really led to anything, but hey, I get it, I understand. But like, the degree of vitriol around Miniature Market being owned by Asmodee, being bought up by Asmodee, is just baffling to me. The degree of it. The degree of, like, not just the fear-mongering, but the actual, I'm done, I'm switching all my orders over to Game Nerds. Which, by the way, again, by all means do so. I don't really care. You want to support Game Nerds, great. But if your goal is to support Game Nerds, I mean, Game Nerds has been around for a while. Like, you could have supported them whenever. The idea of... And then I saw one comment from somebody who was like, I'm driving all my purchases to Amazon now. And it's like, okay, congratulations, you know. You've moved from one largely owned corporate overlord to another, but this one actually has a lot of bad things to its names. Like, that's a weird reaction to me. But hey, you do you. Now, there's different aspects to this, multiple aspects. Again, this video is going to be a little bit all over the place as far as chain of thought. I don't have a usual list of bullet points that I'm following off of. But let's take a second to address the fact that, well, it's not about the fact that Miniature Market's owned by Asmodee, it's about the fact that Miniature Market didn't tell us. Judging by the reactions I'm seeing online, I kind of understand why not. Now, I'm not necessarily excusing it. I mean, they should disclose... It's actually interesting. I don't actually know. Do they have a legal obligation to disclose it? Do they have a moral obligation to disclose it? I don't actually know the answer to either of those questions. Legally, I certainly don't know. That's just a factual question. Morally, it's much more complicated. I mean, what is the moral obligation of a company to tell you something like that? Because here's an interesting one. Does a company have a moral obligation to tell you? If the owner of a company, I don't have a great example, if the owner of a company fired somebody because, without a great reason that day, if they were, I don't know, if the owner of a company fired some employee that day, do they have a moral obligation to tell you? Because it might affect your buying decisions. If you know that the owner of the company just fired someone who's, you know, a single dad taking care of 3 children, I mean, if I found out about that, it might affect my decision to buy from them, right? So maybe they have a moral obligation to tell me that. Meaning, what is the rule for the moral obligation to disclose information? It's an interesting conversation in its own right. I don't know the answer, by the way. I really don't. I haven't given this that much thought. I've literally just dived into this train of thought doing this video. But the idea that a company has a moral obligation to disclose something that might affect your purchasing decisions, how far down that rabbit hole do we go? Or is there a different set of rules around the moral obligation? I don't know, because I'd imagine it falls under the umbrella of things that affect your purchasing decisions. And then that can go really down a rabbit hole really quickly, and yet many of those things I don't think we'd consider to be a moral obligation necessarily, right? So it's something to think about. I don't have an answer. I haven't thought it out. I'd love to have a conversation with someone in person to go through that train of thought, but right now I'm just talking to the camera, so I'll have to read your comments and address those in the weekend review or something like that. Maybe I'll deal with the comments of this video in the normal weekend review on Saturday. But that aside, so legal, I don't know if they have a legal obligation. Moral obligation, now that I think about it, I'm not that convinced they have a moral obligation either. I'm not convinced for or against. But again, given the general reaction of people being like, the sky is falling, please Game Nerds and Amazon, please save me, I kind of get why they didn't want to say anything. Like, it makes sense, right? As far as the doom and gloom aspect of things, just as a general track record, and I talked about this last week in the Weekend Review, when we talked about the fact that Asmodee was just acquired for $2.75 billion by Embracer Group. Now, someone did say Embracer Group has a whole track record and history of stuff. Could be. I don't know enough, but I haven't looked into that part yet. But as far as Asmodee, until now, and all those things, I don't think they've done a whole lot that I can really be that upset about. Some things, yes, but like not like truck drivers peeing in bottles because you can't take work breaks level problems. I think these are small impacts in the world of, oh no, corporate overlord overtaking the world. And some good things, by the way. The whole Board Game Arena thing where everyone decried as gloom and doom. Do you know how much Board Game Arena has grown in the past year? Do you know how many new things have been implemented in Board Game Arena? Like, they are really embracing the Board Game Arena and really launching it into a much better, many more games, much more beta testing, all of these things going on Board Game Arena. So, as far as their buying of Board Game Arena, I think that's gone tremendously well for the board game community. Will it potentially lead to corporate overlords owning all our information? Potentially. But really, we have to worry about that when BoardGameGeek gets bought. Although, even then, even when BoardGameGeek gets an offer from Asmodee, and I kind of imagine they might at some point. I mean, it has to be in the cards, right? It has to be a business decision that Asmodee is considering. Or maybe they've already made the offer and BoardGameGeek has said no. I feel like BoardGameGeek would want to say that. I don't know. But like, I have to imagine someone in Asmodee decision-making land has in some way considered that BoardGameGeek should get an offer, which means that conversation is just one that we have to have in the future. Now, what I don't know is I don't know what that conversation looks like. And I share all the gloom and doom concerns, but also with the understanding that I personally will not actually change anything that I'm doing until bad things are happening. I don't really care if Asmodee owns my information. That would be helpful. You can stop spamming me ads for Seven Wonders because I already own Seven Wonders. You can see that in my collection data. Instead, could you please show me all the pricing hikes for... What game do I want? I don't even know. I didn't think through this part of the video. But whatever games that are on my wish list, that'd be helpful, right? If Asmodee could use that data to properly advertise the board game information that I want. Now keep in mind, I am somebody that has like 15 Alexa devices in my house, so clearly I'm in the audience of people that tend to not be concerned with the information that big companies are gathering, so long as it makes life easier. For now. They're always listening. They're always watching. Shut up, Alexa. Shut up. But yeah, going back to the BoardGameGeek side of things, so the data aspect of Board Game Arena, not really concerned. We'll talk about it when BGG's bought. As far as neutral things, because I know this will be brought up, in case you don't already know, Asmodee just announced a price hike. Like, right after Asmodee got bought, they announced a price hike across, 500 games, whatever it is. A small MSRPs ranging from 5 to like 12% MSRP hikes across all these different games. $49.99 to $59.99, that's not true. $49.99 to $54.99. $12.99 to $14.99. Just MSRP hikes across their games. That could be argued to be bad. Honestly, I can tell you from talking to any number of different board game companies, that price hikes are coming left, right, and center. MSRPs are being raised left, right, and center. This is not an Asmodee problem. This is a freight crisis, way of the world, productions, costs, everything's going up right now. So everything from food to board games to... I don't know if video games have gone up, to lots and lots of things out there. Price hikes are definitely impacting a lot of industries, and board game companies that are not owned by Asmodee are experiencing multiple price hikes anyways, so I'm not quite willing to blame Asmodee for that when they're just doing what everyone else is doing, at least as of now. As far as the two things that I do not like that Asmodee has been involved with, and I did talk about this, I just don't think they fall under, gloom and doom, end of the world kind of situations. I think they fall under... I kind of understand where they're coming from, while I'm not necessarily liking or agreeing with. Their parts policy and the map policy that they really tried implementing but kind of laid off of. Now, those two things are map policies. They tried introducing a minimum advertised price and really trying to ensure that companies cannot offer anything below map. They still have that in place, but for a while they were going really hardcore in the way that they were implementing it and the direction they were taking. They've kind of eased off a bit, but their goal was, hey, we're gonna really try to enforce games to be more expensive because we want you to be more selective about your board game purchases. And they kind of laid off after a bit. They were trying to be more restrictive for a long time, but how they're doing it, they eased off a bit while still having a map policy in place, a minimum advertised price. I don't love it, but hey, I kind of understand. It's a conversation about leveling the playing field, about how do regular game stores survive when they're selling game X for $49.99 and online stores selling it for $42.99, and small game stores just can't compete with that. And so they're trying to level the playing field to a degree while keeping prices high. So it benefited them, and it benefited the small game stores. Tricky conversation because of that mixed benefit aspect. But then the one I would say I really don't like is their parts policy. They've changed their conversation around, they changed the conversation around parts and replacement parts to basically saying, hey, if your game's missing a part, you can't come to us. You have to go to the store that you bought it from, and they have to come to us. Now, first of all, I don't like that as a store owner. As a store owner who now has to deal with when a new in-shrink game from Asmodee-owned company is missing a piece, we have to jump through hoops now. So as a store owner, it's just obnoxious. I don't appreciate it as a store owner. As somebody who also buys games, it is much, much harder to go through that process to get your piece back because you have to, again, jump through hoops. You have to go to a store who has to jump through hoops. The whole thing takes longer and is more complicated, it's more frustrating, and plus you often feel bad for the store owner on the other side of it, so I don't like that policy all around. The aspect of Asmodee is basically like, hey, you're missing a part, tough nuggies, it's tough, it's on you. I don't like that. I really genuinely don't. Also, they didn't say you're out of luck, they just made you jump through hoops. They made you go to somebody else instead of them to get the replacement piece. I don't love it, but it's still not forcing your employees to, pee in bottles because there's not Drake's level of corporate overlordness. By the way, I do buy from Amazon. I actually understand people who don't buy from Amazon and the reasons you wouldn't. I understand the reasons. Everything in life is complicated. The thing I don't understand, the thing I don't get, and the reason I sat down for this video is I don't understand the general mindset of you've become successful, so now we hate you. It's a common concept that we see a lot, all over the place. The concept that we pick on the people who've made it, that we pick on the biggest people. CMON gets hate because they are the biggest violator of, large companies selling games on Kickstarter. And yes, I know that there's other broken down reasons, but they are the ones who get the hate compared to all the other companies who do the same thing, who have the same issues, the same problem. I don't want to set a target on much people's backs, I'm not going to specifically name it, but I could name 5, 6 other companies that are much worse than CMON in any number of different aspects that you would blame CMON for, and nobody talks about them. When they come up in Facebook groups, they don't get hate left, right, and center. CMON's like, hey, here's Marvel Zombies, and a whole bunch of people are excited, and everyone else is just crapping on it. Like, attacking CMON, attacking anyone who likes their games, just going all after them. Like, I think CMON gets an undeserved amount of hate because they are the largest. I'm not saying they can't be better. I'm not saying there aren't reasons that I don't understand where the hate comes from. But I think that because they're the largest in this potential problem, everyone hates on them. When people love to attack Walmart for any issues, nobody attacks all the other smaller companies that do the exact same thing. Walmart gets the hate. When people want to attack Amazon, Amazon gets the hate. You always see the largest companies in a sphere getting the hate. Awakened Realms used to be like a company people loved and adored, and everyone was like, ooh, yay, look at this startup company, and we all love them. And as they got larger and got a lot of success and did well and did better, people started getting more frustrated. Now, they have a lot of fans, myself included. They have a lot of people who like the company. But there are certainly people who have shifted over to, big company selling garbage Kickstarter games and need to do this, this, and this. Like, people love to hate on the big guy. It's there's a paradox. I've talked about this before. The Annie something paradox. I can't remember. It's named after a person, but there's a paradox that relatability breeds success, but then success will make you unrelatable. The idea that you can't have it both ways. If you're relatable, people will look at you and they'll say they'll feel like they feel for you. They feel for the small guy. They want to support you. They want you to grow. Let's help build each other up. And then once you've built up, now you're the enemy. Now success makes you unrelatable. And we love to tear people down. We love to tear people down under the guise of we are tearing down the corporate overlords, those capitalist pigs, for the sheer audacity of them having made it, of having done well. There are people who work at Miniature Market. There are people who work at Asmodee. There are people who are definitely making money. That's true. That's absolutely true. And so what? What's the game plan? The game plan is we shift our sales to game nerds until they're successful enough that Asmodee buys them out? Like, what's the line in the sand where we're actually willing to say, this is the level of success that you're allowed? Like, what is that number? Is it a per person ratio? What is the actual goal when we support people and then when we take away that support? What is the driving force behind these decisions? I don't know if thought goes into them. I'm curious if it does. Or is it just a binary, small person good, big person bad? I saw something the other day that it's completely unrelated to this, but it fits so well. It was a little meme about Robin Hood. It was Robin Hood giving some money to these perishers or whoever, giving some money to somebody in this Robin Hood fairy tale. And the person's like, oh, thanks so much, we feel so rich now. And Robin Hood grabs a knife and says, wait a minute. The idea that what's that paradox? Does Robin Hood steal from the rich to give to the poor? And what if the poor now become rich and the rich now become poor? Who does he steal from now? And it's all jokes. It's all fun and games. But I'm curious what the thought process is behind the decisions we make, behind the decisions you make, behind your decision to take away your support from Miniature Market because now it's owned by Asmodee. A lot of the same people still work there. Most people didn't notice the difference. There have not been threads posted about how Miniature Market is failing as a company and how they're letting you down and their quality's gone downhill. We haven't seen stuff like that. So what changed? They're owned by somebody who has money. Okay. That's not enough for me. Maybe it's enough for you. And again, I love game nerds, by the way. I really do. Most of my orders go through game nerds. But the rest of my orders do go through Miniature Market, and that likely won't change. They will likely stay my 2 stores unless and until I notice a quality difference that causes me to choose one over the other. In any case, this video doesn't really have a defined endpoint. This is more just food for thought and part of the conversation around I think people really, really hate success. It's fascinating, the mindset behind it. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. Bring in the comments however you want. I'll try to address them in the weekend review. Come back for the weekend review where I will address the comments that needed addressing. I'm sure there'll be an interesting conversation. This is one of those, Rodney Smith's, table talk back videos where there'll be a bunch of conversations and comments that I will want to respond to, whether in the comments below itself or in a subsequent weekend review video. Until next time, have a good one.